Well, it's Wednesday, and yes, we are still covering the LA riots, and maybe even worse than the implosion that is LA is the implosion that is Gavin Newsom. Yes, the governor slash podcaster filed an emergency motion not to protect LA, mind you, but to stop President Trump from protecting LA. Gavin is dumb enough to think that we, the people at large, are as dumb as, well, some of the people in California. He thinks that these people are more dangerous to LA than these people. Yeah, that's mystifyingly stupid, even by Gavi's standards. And last night, he was so stoked that he got more camera time to bitch and complain about Donald Trump. But, when I heard the announcement that he was going to be doing a live stream, I thought, maybe, just maybe, he would ask the thugs to stop terrorizing Los Angeles. But no, it was just another opportunity for Gavin Newsom to be in front of the lights and the cameras to bob and sway in that creepy way of his and lie right out his ass.
Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets, illegally and for no reason. This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. That's when the downward spiral began. He doubled down on his dangerous National Guard deployment by fanning the flames even harder. And the president, he did it on purpose.
I personally enjoyed the first 6 minutes of the live stream that I didn't show you there because there was no audio. What a dumbass. But perhaps the only person dumber than Gavin is LA Mayor Karen Bass. I guess at least she was actually in LA for the burning of LA this time. That's actually a step up for her. But here she is arguing that if President Trump would just stop enforcing the law, the lawless and feral beasts would stop rioting.
This is a problem that started on Friday morning when the raids happened. This did not need to take place.
Look, Los Angeles is the seventh circle of hell, but the leaders of LA are in the seventh circle of stupid. Do these idiots really think President Trump is going to betray his biggest, most important campaign promise just to appease the rioters and the thugs in California? Oh, that's a hell no. And also, you'll notice these protesters are back to looting the Apple store in the name of, I guess, the innocent abuelas being deported by ICE. Or is it Kilmar Abrego Garcia, maybe still George Floyd? Who really knows? Also, let me add, it's pretty rich for Gavin Newsom to label President Trump a tyrant for sending in the National Guard to protect LA when Gavin sent the frickin' Coast Guard to arrest lone paddleboarders during COVID. So save it. This kind of crap would never happen in Florida or Tennessee or Texas, by the way. Joining me now is another wise person who happens to live in one of those civilized states with a civilized governor. Here now is We the People podcast host, our friend Gates Garcia. All right, we have another day we got to cover the LA riots because guess what? They had to issue a curfew last night, of course, because lo and behold, the innocent arsonists, the peaceful arsonists, they couldn't help themselves from vandalizing things, attacking people. And surprisingly, they didn't have jobs to go to during the day, also didn't have jobs to go to at night. What do you make of what's happening in Los Angeles?
Yeah, Tommy, thanks for having me. I think this is strategic chaos. You weaken the law for political points and the law breaks. California didn't just fall apart overnight. They gutted ICE, they demonized law enforcement, they called the border racist, they treated citizenship as a formality, not a privilege. Democrats did this. They're waving their flag while undermining ours. Why are you even here? It's like breaking into someone's house and demanding that they redecorate all of their furniture and art. This is not assimilation. It's demanding a rewrite of the rules and being applauded for it. This is not immigration. It's an occupation. Insurrection, the Insurrection Act, which Trump is getting criticized for, is for this. It's for when states are unwilling and unable to protect their citizens. Newsom is unwilling, he's unable, and he's uninterested. If you can send in the National Guard for hurricanes and the military for hurricanes, you can send them in for a constitutional crisis. And finally on this, I think this is the best commercial for conservatives. You mentioned that I'm in Florida, you're in Tennessee. This doesn't happen in our state. In fact, in Florida, Governor DeSantis is awarding $5,000 signing bonuses to cops who locate from other states to work in Florida. We love our cops in Florida. We love our law and order. While California burns, Florida builds. Over 800 people a day are leaving California. They're not going to Illinois. They're not going to Oregon. They're going to Florida. They're going to Tennessee. They're going to Texas. California gave us sanctuary cities. Florida gave us law, order, and real freedom. And conservatives need to just be pointing to the scoreboard.
You know, Governor Ron DeSantis doesn't even put up with spring breakers that want to go buck wild. I can't imagine how he would react if you had insurrectionists, arsonists, anarchists in the streets protesting in the name of illegal immigration. I could only imagine how Governor Ron DeSantis would handle that. But people would not dare do it there because they know that they would be arrested, they would actually be prosecuted, and they would serve time behind bars. But in Los Angeles, they know none of that's going to happen. But I love the way that Democrats are characterizing this, by the way. You've got Nancy Pelosi. She thinks that this is maybe just the excitement, the exuberance of the moment. Let's take a listen to her assessment.
And I say this as a former party chair, when there is a gathering, a large gathering of people, the anarchists see it as an opportunity and they move in. So always have to be careful whether you see a burned car, a broken window, or whatever it is. It may be the exuberance of the moment, but it may be the anarchist setting in. I heard one of the former police chiefs of Los Angeles speak about this on Sunday.
Yeah, just the exuberance of the moment. I love how they're trying to downplay this. I want to talk about Gavin Newsom for just a moment here, because I think initially, after Kamala lost the election, I think Gavin saw an opportunity for himself to become more moderate. He was like, you know what? I still want to run for president in 28. I'm going to try to appear more moderate. But then he was just overtaken by this moment where the cameras got in his face and he's like, you know what? I don't even care about trying to pretend I'm a moderate anymore. I just love the camera. And this is my opportunity to go mano a mano on Donald Trump. And this is my battle cry. I think his political ambitions are absolutely over after this. But do you think that he understands that? Or do you think he's delusional enough to believe that his brand of leadership in this moment is actually going to be appealing to a national audience?
I can't imagine what's in his head. I think the most effective part of his speech last night was when his cameras and microphones weren't working, as you said, for the first 6 minutes. I think he did more harm for himself and the country when the microphones turned on. I mean, he's just missing an action. He's missing the point, as you say. Newsom's the entire speech of Donald Trump. It's almost like you don't know what state he governs. He failed to speak to families living in fear, parents terrified that their kids would witness riots, or business owners who have had to board their shops and lose their income, their livelihoods. They needed real support, and he gave them a press tour. He should have been on the front lines in front of a smoldering shop front, but instead he stood behind a teleprompter, barking up his next campaign. He's treating LA like a campaign stop, not a crisis zone. I love the line where he says, you know, other states, watch out, you're next. Well, we've already covered this in the last 5 minutes. Not in Florida, not in other states. Those things don't happen where freedom is respected, appreciated, and defended. A governor's job is to manage a mess. A candidate's job is to politicize it. Newsom chose the latter, and it showed. It's in a moment when LA's hardest hit families needed a governor, they got a candidate, and he's not going to stop. He loves the camera, as you say. He loves the microphone, and he gets it. But the American people don't get him.
I don't even think he was giving candidate. I think he was giving reality TV star, and a bad one at that. As someone who watches a lot of reality TV, he still needs to up his game. I don't even think he could make it, quite frankly, on Love Island. But that's another topic, another discussion. Actually, given Gavin's past, he might actually do kind of well on Love Island, but that's a whole other topic. You brought up this metastasizing to other cities, notably not cities that are run by Republicans, because this is not put up with, but Chicago, New York City, the likely suspects. But I think that this is a perfect example, this clip I'm about to play for you, of the disease that is not only liberalism, but white liberalism, trying to convince a person of color driving a vehicle who needs to get where she's going that, in fact, her needs, her wants, her day, her livelihood actually not important because the cause to the white liberals is bigger than that. Let's take a look at this. Perfect example of liberalism, by the way.
That happened. But I have a kid. I know, and these people are having their children taken and their parents. What about my kids? Today,
look at this.
That's what happens to my kids. I can't help it. This is what. But you can if you could just move out the way. You're not going to. How is this a peaceful protest if there's nothing to do? No, it's not.
How do y'all as white people feel about stopping a black woman from going to work?
Oh no, not work. I care so much.
So you don't care about stopping black people from going to work?
Look at this line that you guys are causing. I'm not causing no problems. I'm not trying to. We're just trying to leave.
There's so much to unpack there in just that little clip. I think maybe my favorite part was when the white malnourished soy boy said, work, oh, work. Like, I know that the liberals are so adverse to that concept, but wow, I think that just encapsulates everything we needed to see. What's your take?
Yeah, my heart breaks for that one because she's trying to provide for a family and do it in a dignified manner. You know, nothing sort of sums up today's cultural divide better. Those who honor the dignity of work versus those who demean it in the name of virtue. Work is more than just a paycheck. It's a purpose. Mocking someone's job, mocking the right to provide, to protect, and pursue the American dream. That used to be what unites us, but now we're greeted and sneered by rioters. If that protester valued work, he wouldn't have the time to block people from theirs. He has the luxury to protect us at noon on a weekday because someone else's tax dollars are footing the bill. Privilege isn't a 9-to-5 grind. Privilege is sort of the free time to disrupt someone else's. You want radical justice, Tommy? Respect the worker hustling to feed her family, not the influencer, live streaming a tantrum. The left claims compassion. We've heard that ad nauseum, but it collapses when confronted by real responsibility. Blocking traffic is easy. Paying rent is hard. The protesters' snide, oh no, work reveals a worldview, that prizes slogans over sacrifice. They can't fight the system, but they can't even respect the people who keep the system running. Nurses, truckers, single moms. Dignity of work is a Judeo-Christian value, blue collar, and yes, a conservative value. Lose that and you lose the republic. I mean, real inclusion. We want to talk about inclusion. Real inclusion protects the commuter, not the complainer. You want real economic justice in America? Clear the road for the mom so she can clock in, earn her overtime, and build a life for her family. Blocking her car steals her wage hour. That's literally oppression. It's envy dressed in protest gear. Freedom of speech lets you protest, but the dignity of work makes sure that the lights are on while you protest.
These people are just so stupid. And might I also add, there's this unifying theme with a lot of these protesters. They look relatively similar. Most of them are white, very pale white. Most of them have weird haircuts. They look unbathed. They look scrawny or obese, one or the other. And they just look angry and bitter at the entire world. And this isn't a new thing in the last 5 months that President Trump has been in office. They were angry for the 4 years that Joe Biden was in office as well. So they're just angry at the world, maybe because of who they are and their self-hatred. I don't know, not my problem. If I were these law enforcement officers, if I were these leaders, I would clear these people out right away. But we know they're not going to do that because they subscribe to the value of chaos and anarchy and hating President Trump over anything else, as you so eloquently pointed out. As we wrap up this topic, I think this is just a great button to put on it. So CNN even had to admit that legal immigrants, they happen to like illegal immigration enforcement, and they happen to like President Trump. This blew their minds on CNN. Didn't blow mine, but let's take a look.
Immigrant citizens, immigrant voters, foreign-born voters have gone tremendously to the right on this issue in 2024 and 2025 versus where they were in 2020. Closest to or trust more in immigration. You go back to 2020. Democrats, get this, held a 32-point lead on this issue. Immigrant voters were in the Democratic camp. Jump forward to 2024, 2025. Look at that shift, a 40-point shift to the right among immigrant voters. Republicans now lead on this issue by 8 points over Democrats, more so than any other group that I could find. The group of voters who became more hawkish on immigration were in fact immigrants themselves, immigrants who are registered to vote in this country.
So that's on that issue. How about how they feel about kind of traditionally, historically about Donald Trump?
Yeah. So, you see this shift and you go, what is going on underneath the hood? Well, take a look, Donald Trump. You remember when he first ran back in 2016, immigrant voters were one of his weakest spots. But look at this. Trump's vote share in presidential elections among, again, immigrant citizens, those who are registered to vote. Look at this. In 2016, he got 36% of the vote. You go to 2020, 39% of the vote. Look at this. In 2024, all the way up to 47% of the vote.
I think some of the folks at CNN are having a seizure watching that, because the crap that they deliver to their audiences about how people don't want to deport illegal aliens doesn't match up with the numbers that they're actually forced to display in certain moments of truth and honesty. But Gates, you live in Florida. You live with a lot of legal citizens, legal immigrants, right? So you know this. This doesn't surprise you. It certainly doesn't surprise me. My husband, his family came to this country legally from Cuba, and they are the most hawkish on illegal immigration. But explain it to those who are not seemingly understanding the concept.
Well, I'm from a family of immigrants as well. My great-grandparents immigrated to Florida from Spain to work in the cigar factory. So I appreciate a legal process that involves assimilation and getting a true appreciation for what it means to live, work, and celebrate as an American citizen. And I think people should be afforded that right when we can do that. However, there's a term called skin in the game. And I'm not surprised by legal immigrants going against the tide that they've traditionally gone against on illegal immigration. When you have to earn something and go through a process to earn it, you hold it more dear. You appreciate it more. It would be like me trying out for the football team, going through a 3-day tryout, running the 40-yard dash, lifting weights, throwing and catching footballs, and I get the starting job on the football team, or just make the football team in general. And then on the first day of practice, someone sneaks into the locker room that didn't show up for the tryouts, steals my uniform, and goes out and plays on the field, and I'm left without that. That's exactly what this is. They're coming through, not through a process, but through an invasion. And people that have gone through that process say, enough is enough. I've earned the right to be here. I appreciate this country. I celebrate this country. And I want this country back because I'm a part of it, and they're not.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about that one. I'm glad you brought up playing in a sport and having stuff stolen from you, because that's a perfect segue into our next topic here. Democrats, not only are they for illegal aliens, the only white men that Democrats revere are the white men who play against women in their sports. They love them, right? They will uplift them above everybody else. But I got to get your take, and I know that you've written about this, the ongoing Simone Biles, Riley Gaines thing. We did get an apology from Simone Biles, which I guess I appreciate on its face. At least if it was a PR move, I'm not sure. But, at least there was an apology, an acknowledgement. I don't think she still gets it, but I don't understand how we're still having this discussion, but we are. And I want your unique take on it.
Yeah, so I covered this in a piece for Daily Wire yesterday. My biggest reaction is it's almost like Simone Biles, by the way, a world-class athlete. She's represented our country on the playing field, and has all the medals to show for it. But it's almost like she went to sleep for a few years and woke up without having realized the culture's kind of caught up. And so just a few years ago, Simone would have been celebrated as a cultural icon. Today, she's apologizing to someone who stood for biological truth. That shouldn't sound like breaking news, but it kind of is. That's not a knock on Simone. It's a sign of culture finally coming around to truth. Truth is finally pushing back, and Riley Gaines is leading that charge. Simone played the cultural card that has always worked and got a cultural wake-up call. Simone Biles used to be untouchable. The media used to amplify her. This stuff was gospel, but today she gets roasted for it, and that's because we are winning. Truth is winning. So what's changed? The narrative, the culture, the country. Americans are finally saying enough. Enough erasing women. Enough pretending fairness doesn't matter. If there's anyone who should be protecting girls, it should be women. Biles had a chance to stand for women and for girls, and she played it safe, and she got met with force, and that force is Riley Gaines. Simone has the medals, but I know Riley. Riley has the scars, and we're proving that, to win the culture war, you need the scars. So look, Tommy, I'm a girl dad. Who am I pointing my daughter toward? Simone Biles, an icon, sure, but as a father, I know who I'm choosing, the one who has my daughter's back, the one who put her reputation on the line to defend the truth, Riley Gaines. That's who I want my daughter looking up to. This isn't about gold medals. It's about moral courage. When the history of all this whole era gets written, it won't be just about who won the medals. It'll be about who stood for women and girls with courage. And you know the old line, chicks dig scars? Well, America needs more women with scars, and Riley Gaines has them.
Yeah. Fewer scars would be great, though. You know, if women didn't have to deal with this, that would be awesome. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I think you're right. There is a shift that's being made, and I'm happy to see it. I'll tell you one area, though, where there doesn't seem to be enough of a shift, okay? The sports team's still doing the drag nights and stuff. Now, let me be clear about this. If you want to have a pride night, I don't even necessarily care. Right? A pride night, whatever. It actually brings people to the ballpark. I'm talking specifically about baseball. It brings people to the ballpark. I don't really have an issue if it's, rainbows and it's like, whatever. I mean, fine. It's when you have to then move it into the freak show. You don't need the drag queens. You don't need the freaks. You don't need, the people wearing leotards with their junk fully exposed. I don't understand why professional sports, and because we're in baseball season, and it's the only sport I care about, I don't understand why they're still doing it. But we just had the Red Sox. They hosted their drag show. I think every team but the Rangers still does. And it's not just pride, rainbows, be who you are. It's this stuff. And if I were a gay person, I would quite frankly be insulted. I'd be like, just because I'm gay, I have to wear a thong and I have to parade around in like a wig and drag makeup. But why do you think teams are still indulging this?
I don't know. I just covered this issue in Blaze, and right on cue, the Red Sox have a drag show. It should be noted, Tommy, my Rays did hang 10 runs on them that night and walk away with the victory. So perhaps the Red Sox should focus on pitching over pronouns. But this wasn't just entertainment. It was ideological theater at, I believe, America's oldest ballpark. Corporate America has been backing off this stuff, but sports haven't caught up. As I said in my Blaze piece, the number of top U.S. brands promoting Pride this month has dropped by 41% since last year. So after Bud Light, after Target, after all these brands got burned, people got smart, or companies got smart. Sports didn't. People don't want sexuality celebrated in public, regardless of what your sexuality is, mine and yours included in that, Tommy. Baseball used to be America's pastime. Now it's the front line. It's the new American liturgy, drag as ritual, baseball as altar, affirmation as worship. And if you're not for it, you better sit on the bench. The real contest is not between, I don't think, the Rays and the Red Sox. I think it's really between faith, family, and freedom versus pride, performance, and politics. And Fenway made it clear which team they're playing for. The last thing I want to say is, what about the families? Like, I take my kids to games. Did they vote for this? Did they sign off on this when they bought their ticket to that game for their child to have to be subjected to this in between innings? It's unfair to those families, which is the overwhelming majority of people that attend those games, that they have to suffer through this stuff.
You're right. And it's not just the rainbows anymore. It's this overt sexual performance. It's that kind of thing that's not family friendly. And I do want to say, I want to be consistent on this. You mentioned if you're, a heterosexual, I don't want to see that stuff either. I don't think last year when the Mets had the Haktua girl throw out the first pitch, I was like, that's BS, because families have to explain to their kids why this girl is throwing out the pitch, and then they have to explain it's because she made a crude joke on a Man on the Street interview, and now she's revered for it, and she's throwing out a pitch. I don't like it when it's my side either. If they were having a straight burlesque show in front of people at a ballpark, I wouldn't like that either, because it doesn't belong. Your sexuality and all this stuff, whatever it may be, it doesn't belong at the ballpark. And why they keep thrusting this stuff on people, I think that it actually goes to the heart of it. They want kids to see it. They want kids to be sexualized. It's hard not to believe that. It's hard not to think that when a lot of this stuff is geared towards trying to bring in the family, bring in the kids, have them see the junk in the leotard. It's gross. Cover it up. People want to see baseball. I'm gonna
Tommy, can I just add one quick thing?
Yeah.
So we have a lot of athletes on our show, and Jonathan Isaac from the Orlando Magic coming up in a week or two. We've already done the interview, and in talking to these athletes, I've had former baseball players on the show. A lot is going on behind the scenes that we don't see. You know, the team is sort of run in a corporate manner, but you know this because your husband's the MLB as a coach, but we're making significant progress here, and a lot of the players don't stand for this nonsense, and they're the ones that hit the home runs and throw the strikes. So I think we're making some progress here.
Making some progress. I would also add that not only, speaking of baseball, not only is it overwhelmingly conservative when it comes to players and coaches, but a lot of these players that have Hispanic Latino backgrounds, they really don't like this crap because they are more traditional than the white and the black guys that are on the team. They don't like it. And, you know, last time I checked, they're the ones that are pulling in some pretty dang big salaries. So, you know, it's going to take some big ones to say something and say, we don't want to do this. Maybe then they'll listen. I'm not sure. I think it'd go a long way, though. Kind of like with COVID, when they're like, we're not doing this vaccine crap and we're not, you know, getting a vax to go play in Toronto. There was a couple behind the scenes that were like, we're not doing it. And then all of a sudden the mandates went away. So it's amazing what the big players with the big salaries can do. Last thing I want to talk about is this military parade that's going on this weekend. It happens to coincide with not only President Trump's birthday, but also the Army's birthday and Flag Day. So Gavin Newsom last night in his little live stream that didn't have an audio component for the first several minutes said that this is about Trump celebrating his birthday. And he thinks people are dumb enough not to understand that it's also the Army's birthday and it's also Flag Day. But what do you make of this? And before I ask your opinion on the parade, I want to get Donald Trump warning people if they want to pull some funny business, what's going to happen. Let's take a listen.
We won the war, and we're the only country that didn't celebrate it. And we're going to be celebrating big on Saturday. We're going to have a lot of, and if there's any protest that wants to come out, they will be met with very big force. By the way, for those people that want to protest, they're going to be met with very big force. And I haven't even heard about a protest. But, you know, this is people that hate our country, but they will be met with very heavy force.
So I'm sure there's going to be something that goes down. There will be some idiots that are going to go protest for Hamas or maybe for the drag queens, maybe for Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I mean, pick a stupid issue. There will be people out there probably advocating for it. But I don't know if they want to do that around a giant contingency of military and patriotic folks. That might, you know, land them in a bit of a Jason Aldean try that in a small town situation. But what do you think's going to happen this weekend? And what do you think of the Democrat criticism of patriotic displays and celebrations?
Yeah, I thought Trump's message was blunt. I thought it was direct. I thought it was totally in line with sort of the unapologetic America First posture that defines him. This wasn't just about security. It was about reclaiming the public square from people who hate our country, but the country that gives them the right to stand in it. This isn't about Trump versus protesters. It's about patriotism versus provocation. Let's be honest. If you're planning to protest a parade honoring the U.S. Army's 250th birthday, you're not speaking truth to power. You're spitting in the face of service and the American flag. This is not civil disobedience. This is civic suicide. This is Trump's way of putting the flag back on offense. I mean, he's an offensive guy, and that's what we've needed for so long. This country's been on defense, and we're back on offense. He's not just defending the military. He's reclaiming its cultural ground. For too long, the left has acted like patriotism is suspicious, like loving America is something to apologize for. The left will frame this as fascism, Tommy, you know that. But the reality is that under Biden, violent protesters have been given space to riot, to block freeways, and to desecrate monuments and to rename them without consequence, by the way. Trump is saying, not this time. We take to the streets for military parades, for the 4th of July. They take to the streets for pride parades, for riots, for looting. This isn't tyranny. This is a return to order, the order that people crave. Trump is reminding people that the stars and stripes deserve a procession line. The left doesn't hate the idea of force. They just hate when force protects what they disagree with. This isn't about opposing force. It's about opposing the target of the force. It's about tanks. It's about truth. It's about tanks is all I can really say about that. I mean, I'm so offended by the fact that people would take over an army parade that it bothers me.
I don't think that that's the place to do it. I think they're better off in LA, with Gavin Newsom as their ringleader over there. Last point on that is Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who I think is doing a great job also when he's testifying this week to the Senate. But he made some comments at Fort Bragg, rightfully returned to its name, Fort Bragg. Again, just echoing the same sentiment that you just said and that they've said from the very beginning. Let's take a listen to this as we head into Flag Day and the military parade.
Standards, accountability, readiness, training, warfighting, lethality. We're not a college or a university. We're not interested in your woke garbage and your political correctness. We're warfighters who close with and destroy the enemy on behalf of our nation when we come home.
So not everybody in that crowd was cheering. I was watching. There was a couple that weren't. But by and large, yeah, the people that are serving this country, they're like, yes, that's why I signed up for this. It wasn't because the drag queens told me to. But what do you make of, the recruitment numbers kind of speak for themselves. They're hitting their targets way ahead of time. I think Pete Hegseth's doing a fantastic job. And he's taken all the crap that was laid on the military by previous administrations, and he's rooting it out. And then, of course, there are going to be some people that cry and moan about it. But I feel like the people that are crying and moaning about it aren't the people that are actually fighting and defending our country. They're the people that are sitting somewhere with an activist label who want to make the military into their woke experiment. That's not going to happen under this Secretary of Defense.
I've watched the speech 4 times, and it gives me chills every time. This speech gave our soldiers an exhale from the bureaucratic nonsense they've had to choke down. This is the clearest contrast yet between Trump's military and Biden's military. Under Trump, strength, readiness, respect for the warrior class. Under Biden, drag queen recruitment videos, DEI workshops, and a top brass more worried about, I would say, misgendering than misfires. Trump's military is focused on freedom. Biden's military was focused on feelings. We build warriors in this country. The other side wants to build HR departments in camouflage. I know Green Berets. I know Army pilots. I've talked to them. These aren't partisans. They're patriots. They want to do their job, which is to win wars, not woke contests. This wasn't political theater by Hegseth, regardless of what the left says. It was a standing ovation for common sense.
Yeah.
Speaking a standing ovation, you mentioned it. Like, there were people in the background, I would say the overwhelming majority of them, some of them had like smirks on their face, like, wow, we haven't heard this in a while. So, Tommy, I just say, let's make it simple. If you want to use different pronouns, fine. That's your right. But that right is only protected because men and women are trained to be lethal, as Hegseth says, not sensitive. If you actually care about the trans community or any community, you should build the strongest military possible to protect their liberty, period. We want pronoun guides out of the military, along with Biden's PowerPoint slides that he was sending to them.
Yeah, Biden or the auto pen. We don't really know at this point. I always appreciate having you on. It's always such a great conversation. Where can my audience go to read more and see more of what you're doing?
Yeah, I write for Blaze, and you can find all my work at wethepeoplemedia.com or follow me on social media, Gates Garcia FL, as in Florida, the free state, Gates Garcia FL. Thanks so much, Tommy. I always like being on.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. I hope to have you back soon. Maybe one of these days I'll get myself to Florida, another great state. It's great going from free state to free state. It's just liberating and wonderful. So much better than California. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon. All right, folks, I want you to pay attention to how the left downplays the carnage they've sown. It's time for final thoughts. Folks, I want you to pay attention to this. The left will try to downsize and downplay the consequences of their policies in a twisted attempt to gaslight you into thinking it's not so bad. The examples of this are literally countless, but let me name some of the most egregious. Let's start back in the original Summer of Love 2020, when major American cities were burned to the ground and pillaged for George Floyd. That's when the mostly peaceful BS started, right? But the narrative was that, yeah, businesses, buildings, courthouses, and the like were destroyed, but it was for the greater good, of course, for George Floyd. So screw the little guys and gals that lost their livelihoods in that, or the poor people who were killed trying to protect businesses. People like David Dorn, the 77-year-old retired police captain who was fatally shot after interrupting the looting of a pawn shop in St. Louis. They were looting the pawn shop for Black Lives Matter, but David Dorn's apparently didn't. You see, for Democrats and leftists, a few people can die if it advances, the larger purpose. Same thing for the innocent Americans murdered and or raped by illegal aliens.
As an aside, I'll tell you, having done the work I've done, it is our undocumented immigrants that are the least likely to commit a crime.
So funny, right? Kate Steinle, Molly Tibbetts, Laken Riley, Rachel Morin, Jocelyn Nungaray, all negligible in the Democrat bigger picture. But it's also the same argument Democrats use to bypass the discussion of men hijacking women's sports and spaces. Not a big deal that some entire teams of girls have to lose to boys, or entire locker rooms of girls have to look at male junk in their spaces. See, for Democrats, those girls are once again not significant.
Trans people in the United States doesn't even exceed 1% of our population, and yet there is so many resources and energy and time dedicated to figuring out how we can more finely major issue that is precipitating.
So they prioritize the, by their own calculation, insignificant percentage of the population that is gender confused, rather than all the women and girls impacted by it. Which, of course, brings us to this week in the LA riots, wherein Democrats not only tell us the riots are peaceful, but they downplay the violence and destruction and pure anarchy like this.
Don't miss the point, you all. Don't think that somehow, because they called out the National Guard, there was violence. There was no violence. I was on the street. I know. And I went from downtown detention back out into the community, talking to people what happened in Paramount, what happened in Compton, what happened in Inglewood. So, first of all, get it straight.
These people are shameful, but they aren't at all ashamed of their lies, their deceit, their smug gaslighting. But make no mistake, they truly believe everyday people, you and I, are collateral damage. And don't worry, it's fine. They don't care about you. You are but a speck of dust on their ass. And don't forget that either. Those are my final thoughts. Tune in tomorrow live again at 1 p.m. Eastern. Catch full episodes on Outkick and Fox Nation. Also, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.